was thinking I would control the slides for it. You can just let me know when you want me to.
Oh, I got it. It's not a big deal. I like walking around. Guys, do I look good with my coffee that's actually just water?
Yeah. Fantastic.
Would you like this? Great.
Yeah.
So, am I all right? Also, I
Am
guess
I across this behind you?
Hi everybody. My name is James Von Gravely.
Is there position?
Hello everybody.
Do you want to see the screen? Yeah, see
I'm
him.
production manager,
Okay, I think
producer over at
yeah,
Awesome
it's
Inc.
like a little
right now,
low, but
which is pretty cool. I do production managing for
I think
their
that's fine,
series, TV series and stuff, and then I do commercial producing for their commercial projects. Stuff that you might see, like Carvel, or some stuff that you might not see, and end up like on, I don't know, some kind of industrial conference circuit or something like that. It's always very glamorous. Oh, it's this one. Yeah, I got it now. So I've done some cool things in the past. These are the projects I like, and I'm pretty happy that I'm doing. And then there are some projects that I did for a while that I didn't like so much, but they're fine because they paid me. And then there's some yummy projects that actually did pay me in cake. And I like those too. It's a lot. It's a wacky world over here in animation industry doing a bunch of random stuff. So a little bit about me. I went to SCAD for 4 and a couple extra quarters because I failed math for a little bit. And I went for screenwriting, which is surprising when you think, okay, well, what do you do for a living? And I do producing. I spent 2 years in event planning before I did any form of producing and animation. I spent about a year in the indie film studios doing some freelance production help, basically just organizing spreadsheets for them and stuff. Before I got picked up by Bento Box for about 5 years. I was there for a long time doing a bunch of different TV series, and that was a very eye-opening, incubating experience for me. Now I'm over at Awesome Inc. I've been there for 1.5 years, plan to be there for quite a few more, I hope. But you know, it's been pretty good. However, I did want to say that career paths, in case you guys are worried about this at all, they're a little weird. Here is a list of things I also did that did not make it into the resume. Some fun things like, you know, Jimmy John's bike delivery. I did that for a day. I sold Magic the Gathering cards in the secondary market. I did some YouTubing. I was a landlord very briefly. I basically got a place really, really cheap, and I charged my roommates more money than the entire rent, so I made a little extra on the top, don't tell them. It got me through college. So I did graveyard shifts at a hotel before, too. So this is all to basically say, that's a lot of weird stuff, right? And that means you guys are probably fine if you're having any issues. If you're like, this is taking me like 7 years before I really got to where I wanted to go. Join the club. That's how it works. It's really normal. And I wanted to just say that just to calm everyone down a little bit. You know, I think the big sort of like thing to recognize is that the job skills that you pick up as you go forward, at least nowadays in this type of generation, they're not necessarily like, oh well, you know, I did screenwriting before this and now I'm trying something else, so I'm basically starting my career over. Your skills are cumulative, you know, like they add to each other. And I love stealing graphics from the internet with watermarks. It's my favorite thing to do. There was options there without watermarks, but that's less fun. So I really want to have that. Your skills are cumulative. You guys are anything you do will help you in your next step, and I think that's really important to recognize. I wanted to just quickly say, why am I here? And the answer is, it's gonna be a rare one. I am actually here to meet you guys. Normally, that's not necessarily the case, right? You got someone, if networking, you guys gotta pretend that you both have the same hobby, and then you're like, you know, hey, we should hang out sometime, then you hang out for a little while, and you're like, okay, and then also, can you get me a job? You know, it's like a weird drop later, you're like, oh, this is transactional. I am genuinely here to meet you guys. I, after the pandemic, have not really met a lot of new blood into the industry, and there are times, I know it's shocking, where we want to hire people who are new to the industry, not necessarily people who've been in the industry 10 years and have a huge paycheck. So this is me basically saying that, yeah, it's true. Sometimes being new to the industry is actually kind of invaluable, and you can get your foot in doors that you wouldn't normally get into because you don't have a ton of experience, which some studios want. They want to mold you. They want to make sure that you know their type of pipeline, and they prefer people with less experience. So this is all to say, I'm here to meet you guys. You guys should absolutely take advantage of this when you possibly can. This is one of the few times you can go up to someone and be like, so are you hiring? And I go, well, maybe. I didn't want to make too many slides here. I wasn't really trying to make a whole speechy thing, so I didn't want to turn this more into a Q&A. You guys can ask me questions. I do have two things here, just maybe as like hints. I've got one column here, things that I'm really qualified to answer and tell you guys. Stuff like the skills that you might need to be hired, literal things that you might actually need to be hired at jobs, starting and managing independent projects if that's something you're interested in, like budgeting and whatnot. Anything that involves time, cost, or people, card games, that one has nothing to do with the industry, I'm just really good at them. Networking and advanced production skills. You guys want to talk about, you know, contracts? I can do that kind of thing. If you want to talk about some other stuff that I probably can also do, a new baseline artist skills needed for most jobs. I can talk about what makes for a good portfolio. If you show me things that you have, I wouldn't show them at this Q&A necessarily, but afterwards in the meet and group, then fine. I can probably also give advice on any career path that you're looking to do up to like the first 3 years in the industry at this point. I can't probably go past that because I don't know, I'm not an advanced, you know, animator or background designer or character designer or something, but I can get you started on stuff. Anyways, that's it. So feel free to unload your questions as you guys have them.
Can I make a quick announcement?
Yeah.
So we are going to have multiple methods of asking questions today. So one, there's going to be a microphone going around the old-fashioned way, and then we're going to be using something called Pigeonhole. So let me just pull it up real quick.
Introvert and extrovert friendly Q&A.
Yeah. Oh, so you know what I'm doing. So basically, you go to pigeonhole.at, and then, or you can scan the barcode, I'm guessing. And then the password to get into the thingy thing is ASIFA, and then you can introvertly ask your questions.
And then
Okay.
vote. Who doesn't like to vote?
Oh yeah.
I love voting.
Does anyone have a question? I saw this hand. Of course I have.
So, question for you. I know you've had a couple of different roles, or you did Box for 5 years, and now you're at Awesome Inc. Can you walk me through like what a typical day looks like for you at Awesome Inc?
No, I can't. Like, I mean, if you want to be completely honest about the job of production, it's like spinning 100 plates at any point in time, and those plates change from day to day. It may be different in other cities like LA or New York, things that are maybe a little bit more, I don't want to say solidified, but things that have more like there's a pipeline, everyone goes through the same pipeline over and over again. Those types of jobs, yeah, there's probably like, you could say, well, I started at 10 a.m. answering emails, and then at 11 I go and I talk to this group of artists, and then I do file pathing the rest of the day. We don't do that in Atlanta, at least. Atlanta, we are kind of, probably most of East Coast in general is a bit more like blue collar, and the fact that we all kind of get our hands dirty with everything. So it really is like, all right, what's the deadline coming up Friday? We do that. And that's the focus, right? There's some stuff that you do all the time. Check up on artists. You make sure that things are getting done on time. You check to make sure that the progress of the project is getting close to, you know, a good point where that deadline is. But very rarely are you doing anything the same every day. It's actually pretty much every day is different completely.
Now we're gonna go with a pigeonhole question.
Raise your hand so you'll go after this.
So we've got average time between gigs and jobs. That's not a question, but
Yeah, no, I get it. What is the average time between gigs and jobs? It really depends on your career. If it's production, for me, it's not long at all. It's like maybe a month or two. Sometimes you're lucky, and I would say that if you're smart, your goal is when you get told your end date about a month ahead of time, you start thinking, all right, what do I gotta move to? And you're willing to work maybe half-time or part-time at the end of your contract to make sure that you can start on another contract beforehand. There's a little overlap. That's probably what you should be trying to do, so that way you're not doing major gaps of like 6 months or something. If you're an animator and you're just starting in the industry, yeah, that gap can be probably around 4 to 5 months, which is pretty scary. So I would always, when you're first starting specifically, put some fund in there for being just not hired for a while.
Hello.
Hi.
I am an aspiring technical director or technical animator. What would you say, like, I would need to include in my portfolio, or who I would need to contact to if I want to pursue that?
Yeah, so technical direction is a pretty cool job path now that it's like, even now more because of the pandemic, it's become even more important for studios to have it. It used to be one of those things where it was like someone who's pretty technically savvy was also kind of the technical director, and then they just handled harmony or software-based questions as things came. Nowadays, with work from home being so important, most of the time studios will have like a technical director that's part of their core team now. And those guys stick around all the time, which is a cool benefit to being in that gig. I would say that if you're looking to do that, you gotta know that the field is actually pretty small, so you're gonna need to try to stand out from them. But the ways to stand out from them is not necessarily your art skill at all, it's literally how well can you do technical stuff. Coding being an example, pipelining being another example. You wanna make sure that you have a pretty decent grasp of, okay, if this happens, this is the following thing that's gonna happen. I know I'm saying like production almost things, but you're basically production's art friend at that point. So literally just softwares. And the thing that is better than being like, oh, I'm good at Harmony and I'm good at After Effects and I'm good at Blender or any of these things is, I know how to code and I know how to make them talk to each other. If you can do that thing, you're hireable anywhere based on that kind of thing.
Okay, thank you. And we'll go to the next one.
Just do the top one that has the most.
Sure, I'll turn around to read it. How do you stand out in the field of applicants? That's a really good question. I think the answer to that question is, well, don't do anything crazy, right? Like we do get applicants all the time that do, and me, I'll use me as an example. One of the things that I used to do was I used to do a cover letter from the point of view of my dog who was starving and wanted to be fed, and I tried to guilt trip employers. That had a wonderful record of always striking out for me. I tried, I thought it was cool, charismatic. It wasn't, it was just dumb. So the best thing that you can do, I think, at least when you're starting, is recognize that you're probably not gonna stand out, and that's okay. Actually, it's perfectly fine. Because when people hire people who are just starting, we're not hiring people who stand out. We're bulk hiring. We're hiring 10 to 15 animators. So the correct thing to do to stand out is talk to someone. At that point, if you have had a physical conversation with someone who's hiring at the right time, and you say, hey, I'm looking for a job, and you should do that like every month until finally they're like, actually, we're hiring like 10 animators. You're probably in. That's really the keys to that kind of thing. If you're a long-time artist, like you've been an artist for 10, 15 years, your stuff's gonna stand out regardless, because we're gonna be looking for experience if we're looking for experience at that point. So I don't think there's anything too hard to worry about with that kind of thing. It's just, I think physical communication verbal communication is probably better than anything else. Which, if you are in Atlanta, you theoretically have a legs up already because you're around the actual places that are hiring. So that's a good start.
Hi.
Hey.
So, because a lot of us are going to be in that position of new to the industry, getting bulk hired, and like you mentioned, there's going to be a lot of skills that people want us to kind of meld to their specific pipeline. what skills specifically would you say change the most, company to company?
It's a good question. I'm trying to think through. It really depends, you know, on the company's upkeep of the project, right? Like, so it also kind of depends on the industry. So, like, what industry are you specifically trying to-
Like animation.
Animation, okay. So with animation, there's basically 3 different types of animation out there. There's adult animation, there's children animation, there's action animation. Those 3 all have sort of this unique type of vibage, let's say, that go to each of them. And I would say it's not necessarily different studio from studio. I would say look at what the studio produces, and if they do one of those things, it's probably one of those types of things, right? So Atlanta, for example, does a lot of adult animation things, mostly because of Adult Swim being around this area. So it's not really going to be too different from Atlanta-based studios. That's pretty much going to be the same everywhere. However, if you were to go to like LA, let's say, and your goal is to do children's animation there at that point, it's going to be a different group of people, right? And the skills that you're going to be looking for are going to be different for that. For adult animation, it's a lot about timing in your portfolio. So making sure that comedy beats land, and timing is the most important thing that they're looking for that type of thing. For action animation, it's really a lot about movement, and then for children's animation, it's actually more about feel than anything else. Like, does it feel like there was this weight behind something that was said? So I would say try to look at those types of things. And if you have a specific goal in mind that you're trying to go to for that, push your portfolio into one of those 3 directions.
Next question. Anyone need to answer this? Hands? It's all you.
I can just ask this out right now.
Yeah.
I ran out of characters. Basically.
Sure.
So so you've had lots of awesome roles, and I like the idea of being able to translate a lot of that into eventually getting a job in animation.
Right.
And one of the concerns that I get from a lot of my students is that, you know, during the time here at KSU, they haven't exactly had any relevant experience outside of class to be able to put on their resume for an animation job.
Yeah.
So what are some ways you found that you were able to translate some of your previous roles into your resume before you got a job in animation?
Well, I'll say with in terms of production, I have never actually not hired a person who sent me a spreadsheet to track time on a project. Like, that's kind of like one of the few things that almost no one does in production for some strange reason. Is just literally send me a spreadsheet. And I've just hired those people on the spot because they have shown they can do the work that I'm looking for them to do. And I think that's sort of the answer to your question, is just like, if you're trying to get a role, show the person that you can do that role. Simple as that. I had no production experience. To say that, I didn't go to film business even, you know, I'm doing business things now. And I joke whenever anyone asks, well, okay, well, how did you learn those skills? And I say, I played a lot of Magic the Gathering. And it's a resource management game, so it kind of translates. Like, it is, I just am doing that. So when I would do interviews for that stuff, I would talk about, well, how did you get to where you are? And I would talk about Magic the Gathering, but I would say, like, well, you know, I at one point sold a bunch of Magic the Gathering cards, and I basically was able to pay through college for that. I paid my college tuition off with Magic the Gathering cards. They go, wait, how do you do that? You go, well, okay, so there's some stock market things that happen with the Magic the Gathering market. You gotta know what needs to be done here, and like, you talk about these things, and then you're basically talking to the person, they're like, oh, all of those skills do translate to this type of thing. So I think everyone has life skills, and everyone's naturally good at things. Like, as dumb as it is, if someone were to be like, you should see my desktop, it is the most organized desktop in the world. Like, everything's in folders based on the time of day that I needed that. That's a skill I'd look for, you know, kind of thing. So I think the goal there is, if you don't have something necessarily to show in volume or expertise, then just show that you have the translatable skills are important.
Yeah. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Hello, my name is Quincy. I just wanted to ask, and I forgot my question.
Ain't that the way?
Yes.
Ain't that just the way?
17.
17.
It was a Fudgy the Whale cake.
Oh, so basically on the topic of looking for opportunities for jobs, because there's so many opportunities out there, but sometimes it can be hard to really cover all your bases. What do you think are the best avenues for like making sure that you can pretty much cover all your bases and find as many opportunities as you can?
Sure, yeah. I mean, there's always the blitz strategy of literally just emailing every single job opening and eventually finding something. That works. It's a brute force method, and it's always the plan B that you guys should be striving to, because the truth is, you will brute force and eventually you'll get something. It sucks to do that type of thing, especially if there are animation tests involved, because that can suck a lot of your time out for that kind of thing. So you can do that, and I still probably would. The more important thing, I think, though, is trying to get a verbal communication with someone who actually works at the studio. HR, background artist who can then talk to you through things. As crappy as it is to say this, I would say that 90% of all hires come from word of mouth. If you're not on a word of mouth and instead you're in a database, you're not probably getting hired. And it stinks, because especially in such a digital world, right? Especially post-pandemic, where this is kind of one of those negative things about the post-pandemic work from home world, is that if you move away from the jobs, you have less of a chance to get hired. And it stinks. There are ways to do it. There are ways around it. You could do anchoring visits where you say, you manage to get one interview at a studio, and you say, or you message that a bunch of different studios in a bunch of different cities, LA, Atlanta, New York, Texas, different places, right? And you message all of them, and you say, hey, I'm gonna be in the area for a little while. Is it possible that I can just talk to someone? Not saying the word interview, just I can talk to someone. And they might say, yeah, I'm open for a lunch here. And then you go, okay, cool. And then you message literally every other studio that's in that city and go, I'm gonna be in the city on this date. Can I take you out to lunch? And then you kind of make like a planned trip based on that after you got the first okay. Like there's a ton of different ways. That's something from sales tactics. There's a ton of different ways, but I think the number one way is try to get like verbal conversation with someone, a face-to-face conversation. Going to, I don't know, events like ASIFA-South puts out, and when you see people who are industry, professionals there, trying to make an impact there. Yeah, or things like that. So I think that's probably the best way. I would say, I'd say 90 to 95% is hired by word of mouth. The other way, again, too, is just really keep a tight network of friends, right? I make the joke that people who are entry level with you right now will eventually be mid-levels at the same time that you're mid-levels, and will eventually 20 years, 30 years, be high-end level artists at the same time that you're on high-end level artists. So they always have your back, basically. And as long as you have their back too, be generous.
All right, thank you. She's like, we got our next pigeonhole question. You want me to read it?
Is it better to specialize in a medium or generalize in a bunch of roles while trying to find a job? It's better to specialize. 100% better to specialize. Generalization is cool because it gets you at a studio and then keeps you at the studio for forever, but you'll never get hired by a job for being a generalist. No one's ever hiring a generalist. We're hiring a job for a project, let's say it's something that looks like Steven Universe. I'm going to hire animators that can do Steven Universe, and I'm going to hire people's portfolios that look like they have Steven Universe-esque backgrounds, I'm going to hire character designers that look like that they're not that far off from Steven Universe. That is simply commerce, right? Because I don't need to train those people very hard. They've already got a natural inclination towards that kind of thing. That being said, when they show up and then they can show they can do a bunch of other things, and I've got another thing coming up in 2 weeks after they finish, so they take 2-week vacation, and then I bring them back in for that, so I don't have to hire another person, then that's what keeps you going and rolling in the studio. But you never get hired for generalization. You always get hired for specialization. Tough thing about that is you guys might not have a specialization, but you also might not know that you have a specialization. A lot of the people who are hiring will see the roughness in what you're doing and then probably give you say, well, clearly they're this type of animator, so that'll work for us. It's one of those things that is just a natural progression of your portfolio as you continue moving forward with your portfolio. Question? Cool.
So the question that I had, like I spent a lot of time working on like personal projects and stuff that that kind of led to making more good portfolio stuff. The problem was that I felt kind of trapped because I felt like, you know, I'm making my own thing, but it's not getting enough notice to get hired. Should I just make what everyone else is doing and like, you know, probably make more stuff that was guaranteed to get attention, like I'm a fan art and stuff like that.
Yeah.
You know, to get, you know, what I need out of the connections and stuff like that. But I guess some of that's kind of already been answered, whereas you just need to know somebody.
Yeah.
I guess I've just been doing it beyond mine way hasn't been working so far.
Right. It is a bit, if a tree falls down in the forest, no one's there to hear it. Did it fall down? You might be doing great work, but the problem is if you're not talking to the right people, no one's going to know that you're doing that great work. And yeah, let's be clear here. There is a path to doing your own work, getting crowdfunded, moving forward with that type of thing. Doing the YouTube thing where you're putting out stuff, you're finding people who want to pay you on Patreon to move forward, do that kind of stuff. And that is a valid approach that basically cuts out the middleman. It also takes some amount of entrepreneurship that I think normal artists, generally speaking, don't have because entrepreneurship is difficult. It's really hard. But you know, if you've got that bottle of lightning, great, it works. If you're not trying to do that and you're saying, I worked on my own thing, I've got some cool stuff, but I'm not getting hired, I probably need to work on my portfolio more and more, right? The answer is no, you really shouldn't. It's much better to have one strong portfolio piece and you go ahead and you literally message every single studio that exists in the United States than it is to have 5 strong portfolio pieces and have only had time to message them. You know?
Thank you.
Yeah. Sure. If someone were to pursue being a freelance artist, how would you recommend someone learning to draft contracts? That's a good question. The answer is probably going to shock you that YouTube is probably the best thing to look at. I don't know. Getting legal advice is old. Something you can always do is hire a lawyer to help you your first time around, and then basically just use that template till the end of time. But when I was in film school, we often had just these books of contracts that were given to us that were literally just like tear them out and like fill in the blank of what you needed and then hand them out, and it's fine. A lot of freelance artistry is more like knowing how to invoice correctly, so that's the big one. Know how to invoice and know what the right move for invoicing is. Also kind of budgeting correctly too. Freelance artists can make a lot of, and I mean like a lot of money, like way more than you normally would. I would also probably focus on trying to be in the commercial space sphere rather than like series or TV or something, because it's quick enough that you can make contract after contract after contract keep moving. And if there's, you know, a couple of down weeks between those contracts, it's fine because you're making enough money to compensate for that type of thing. But I would also then strongly recommend that you look at doing things like putting 1/3 of that money away in the bank and not touching it until your taxes, because you will be taxed heavily, or you don't have the type of healthcare that you need to pay for, so you gotta do that kind of thing. Another thing that you can do is probably you're gonna want to set yourself up with an LLC, and then theoretically you want to take that LLC one step further and you want to become a actual business. It doesn't matter that you only have one employee, and that employee is you. Separating yourself from the responsibility of your tax liability, aka if you go bankrupt, you don't lose all of your money, you just instead, that company goes bankrupt, is a thing. It's totally, totally scary to do it, and it's really hard to find the information because every state's different. If you're gonna go down that route, all you gotta really need to do is talk to the LLC and Corporations Division of Georgia, and whenever you get confused, call them, and they will tell you what you're supposed to do next, and you just keep doing that for months until it happens. I did it for selling magic cards. Again, I really like magic cards, guys. But I did it because I wanted to get tax-free magic cards. Because what's better than buying magic cards than tax-free magic cards? So I operate a business that buys and sells magic cards. It was totally overwhelming to do it, but just slowly but surely trying to figure out what the law of Georgia is the right move for that. And I'm confident to say I barely make a profit off of it, but also I'm never going to jail because I did it correctly.
Yay!
Taxes are scary, guys, especially for freelance artists.
Hello again.
Hi there.
So now that we're talking about kind of the importance of in-person networking and talking to people and all that good stuff, and since you kind of specialize in the business aspect of that, what would you say is the best way to sell yourself? Something that you're talking about.
Yeah, it's a good question. The answer is just to know sort of like, networking is weird and hard, right? It's like, it's the weirdest dating, because it's just like, hey, we should go on a date, but the one where you pay me for, right? Like, it's strange. And the truth is, most people who are employing won't show up to speed network dating. And most people who are ready to be hired are also probably not necessarily best friends with the co-runner of a studio or something to get their name in the bank there. The trick is knowing fellow artists, right? Like, yeah, people who are going to hire you, it's good to know them and good to be friends with them. But the real trick is knowing an artist who's like, I got your back, you got my back. If I find an opportunity and I'm in a studio, I'll go ahead and put your name in there whenever I get the chance to, right? I'll see if anyone's hiring. We're going to put on a new project here, and I'm getting rolled into it. I went over to my producer and I said, do you guys have any more openings? And he's like, yeah, we're hiring about 10 more designers. I go, I actually know a couple. That's sort of the way to do it, is you just constantly be generous, and generosity will come back in return, generally speaking. I don't think we live in a world like our parents want us to, which is that you start at a company, and you get a pension at a company, and then you die at that company. You're a company man the whole time. I don't think that's happened. I don't think job security like that has existed since the 80s, but no one seems to have thought that that's not how it works. Job security nowadays is you get let go from someone because you're at the end of your project, and as soon as someone else hears that, oh, you're no longer working on the project, that's great. My studio's looking for a character animator right now. I can get you that job. That's job security in this job now.
Microphone? Yeah.
Sorry if my question's a little bit long, but as you were just talking about LLCs earlier, I actually started an LLC recently for freelancing, and I was a bit of a generalist, and I found that was a good way to I guess use all those skills. My question is, how do you suggest to find clients? I've been trying the social media route, but it's been exhausting. I found it often distracts from the actually completing personal projects and getting work out there.
Yeah.
And by freelance art, I just mean things like commissions, people drawing people's characters or ads, animation, a lot of stuff. So I have a lot of different skills.
Yeah. So it's tough. Shouting to social media sometimes is shouting into a void. It's not as much as a closed space as it used to be, and now it's just big, and a lot of people are doing the same thing that you're doing as well. It's tough. So, I don't know. It's one of those things where going to meetup events are probably your best bet with that kind of thing. But not just here.
go into different events, right? So, okay, so you're an animator.
Yes.
You are doing, your business is to do generalist animation.
Yeah, so like characters, animation, storyboards.
Yeah, it's gonna be tough to try to find someone to do that when you're going out with other animators. Now, it's totally cool to meet each other, network with each other, and then try to help each other get jobs when you get into other jobs. However, trying to find clients, you're not gonna find clients by being around other animators. Going to a dental convention is a good way to do it, because then you'll show up and you'll be like, okay, so I'm going around, I'm meeting dentists, which is strange, right? But some of those dentists sell dentist products, and they need someone to do a tutorial video of how this application gets applied into the mouth, and they need some kind of industrial-esque kind of thing. So you get someone on the hook for that, because they have no clue, they don't know. Just like artists who don't know how to find clients. Clients don't know how to find artists. So you basically force the bridge to happen there. After that, you then go ahead and you become this guy. He doesn't know it. He probably doesn't know any other artists ever, because his job is literally teeth. And so from then on, you've got someone who's like, anytime that corporation needs to do this type of explainer video, you're the guy for it, right? And at that point too, they might even get to a point where they're like, actually, we're doing so many explainer videos, you need to hire on a second person to your LLC. And then that's when you start, managing your business that way. But the idea is, yeah, your best bet to find clients is literally go to random places and try to get clients off of that. Not just in Atlanta, too, you can go to different places as well.
Yeah, thank you. That's really empowering, actually. And actually, that's how I got my first, client. I went to the SCAD Animation Fest, and someone just, overheard me talking about animation. But, it does help with the, aspects of knowing what to do other than just, posting into the void, because I have found it, very, distracting. And
Yeah. I haven't done sales in a long time, but when I would do sales, it would be stuff like targeting. You want targeting, and that's kind of your bread and butter. There's a lot of industrial explainer videos out there that people need done and don't know how to get done. That I think is very boring and very not necessarily creative, but is good money.
Would things like Artist Alley and conventions also be good for that?
Yeah, sure. If you're advertising something different. For example, if you want to work with other artists, you might find artists that are, I don't know, let's say story people, they write books. They don't know how to draw.
Right.
That's your friend. You want to create partnerships with artists that can't do your job necessarily, but need someone to do your job.
Yeah. I've also seen lots of character illustrators as well at conventions and stuff. They illustrate my character. That's something I'm thinking of launching as well.
That is perfect. Lasan, you had a question?
Yeah, this is a tough one.
Okay.
Look back on your entire career. What is the best advice that you ever got, and who gave it to you?
It's a YouTube video. I'm not at someone really great here. I naturally was always trying to find new nuggets of information and put it away. I think there's a book, I can't remember the artist who wrote it, but there's a book called Never Eat Lunch Alone. I think that's the title for it. And I think that's actually probably secretly a really cool piece of advice. Is you should be spending all your lunches eating with people, because there's something about eating with someone that builds networking with them. It is very, very cheap. You might spend a lot of money to be like, all right, let me take this master class with someone who's really good in the industry and I want to learn their skills. And it will cost you thousands of dollars. Or you can buy that guy a panini, and he'll tell you everything that you need to know at that time. I met Henry Silic when I was in college, or at least I got in contact with him because I offered to take him out to lunch. And that's crazy. The guy made Cortland, right? That was a weird email from a college kid out to someone who was really, really good. And it managed to make a connection there from that. So, I don't know. I take people out to lunch. You take people out to lunch too, because that helps to strengthen your bonds. So it's one of the things that I try to do all the time is go out to lunch with people, because I think it helps just reforge those bonds, even if they're a little bit broken or it's been a little while. Plus, who doesn't like, a lunch?
Next question.
Hello. I kind of have a weird question, kind of branching off a lot of what other people are saying. It is very hard to get connections nowadays, or it seems. It's had the kind of the effect and adverse effect of COVID, where everyone's together now, but everyone's still miles apart. Do you think the hiring system and the system currently being used by studios, like not just for animation, but for production, do you think it has become a little archaic in the sense of there are past expectations of what the routes you need to go to actually build connections, but also there's, I don't know, crisscrossing wires, right?
Yeah.
There's things you need to do, but things you can't do. Is there potentially any kind of way that production in the future, like going forward, because it's going to have to be remedied at some time, but is there any kind of future for changing the hiring process so that it's more available for people to get into the industry? Because right now, it is very much a box. There's new animators and new people trickling in, but it is still very who you know. There are a lot of talented people out there just being kind of boxed out, and I know it's not intentional.
Yeah.
And I know jobs are finite. Production is has to be specific with budgeting and all of that, but it just seems like it's been very going around of that's the way it is, instead of maybe we need to be making changes. Is there any kind of like going forward for that, or?
Yeah, sure. So I pride myself on being a realist, which often gets confused with being a pessimist, but that's life. This is a very pessimistic statement to say. So I want to say the optimistic thing of, yeah, I think there's a world where those things change. I think the realist answer is that change is incredibly slow and probably isn't going to happen, because it really is just who you know. And the cool thing is, though, in a weird way, that's optimistic and empowering on its own. It means that literally you can be an average animator. I don't mean this to sound weird either, guys, when I say this. You can be an average animator and get a job because you know the right person. And that is to say that it takes some onus off of you trying to be literally the best person in a pack and be a rock star, blah, 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 you know, that kind of thing. The fact that animation is such a collaborative effort of not just animators, but designers and producers and production and sound design, editing, and all these millions of pieces that need to come together to make it work. There's some security in the fact that all you really need to know is that if your friends have your back, you've got their back, you can get a job. And that's kind of nice in that thing. It's difficult because it does put onus on trying to be social. And I know that sometimes it's difficult for people to be extroverted. And not everyone is going to be extroverted. And that's okay, but there are ways to be good at networking, good at communication, and good at making connections with people while being introverted. You just do it the introverted way, right? Like, it does exist, but the onus is on you to still go out there and make those connections. I'm an extreme extrovert, but I go way out of my way to be kind, and I will even take the extra 7 steps needed to talk to an extrovert on an extrovert's terms. But if that extrovert just runs away from me, I'm not going to talk to them because they're not going to talk to me. So that's that. So I do think it's important to put yourself out there, not in a digital social media way, which I think is often confused as being the best approach for it. I mean it in a person in a community way. You know, again, I have this saying that I say over and over and over again. When you are networking, it's often best to be generous and not keep score. And I think I try to carry that my whole life. I don't care who wants to go to lunch with me and talk to me about how to get their first job. I will always go to lunch with someone, talk to them about getting their first job, because that's just the nice thing to do. And I would hope that my bosses that are, executive producers or producers that are higher than me would be willing to take me out to lunch if I needed help too. So that's why I try to keep that in town. Pay it forward, it's good. Yeah.
All right, unfortunately, that is all the time we have for questions. So can we get a huge round of applause for Jimmy?
I'll be around for a while. So it's still fun.
Yeah. So, oh, go ahead.
Everyone say bye to the live stream.
Bye, live stream.
Bye. Okay.
You were my favorite live stream.